In this video, we will talk about something that nobody ever discusses, and it's worth 25% of your IELTS speaking score, and that is lexical resource. So, what is lexical resource? Well, the IELTS IDP website says that lexical resource is all about how flexibly and fluently you can find the right words and phrases to convey precise meanings. So, in basic terms, it just means how well you can use words in the English language. So, let's look at some examples of lexical resource to make it easier for you to understand what this is. So, we will start with a bad example, and that is my favorite movie is The Hangover because it's a good movie and it's funny. Now, that might sound like a good sentence, but let's compare that to a good example of lexical resource. My favorite movie is The Hangover because it's an entertaining film and it's genuinely hilarious. So all I've done there is replace the word good to entertaining film and change the word funny to genuinely hilarious. And why did I change these words? Well, good and funny, those words are fine, but they're a little bit boring. And in the IELTS speaking test, we want to show off our vocabulary. So whenever we are faced with a boring word, we should try to use synonyms. So in this case, we can replace the word good with entertaining film, and we can replace the word funny with hilarious, or in my case, genuinely hilarious. And just by making these small changes, you are more likely to get higher marks. So how can we learn how to use more interesting words like hilarious and entertaining? Honestly, the best way to learn more interesting words is just to broaden our English vocabulary. And you can do that by reading texts like articles or storybooks. You can watch TV shows like Friends, or you can try to speak English with a number of different people. By doing that, you are exposing yourself to more English words, and as a result, you are more likely to get a higher score. Okay, now that we know what lexical resource is, let's look at some common mistakes that you might be making. And for every mistake, I will tell you how you can fix those mistakes. So, one of the most common mistakes that people make in the IELTS speaking test is using a limited range of vocabulary, basically using less words when they speak. Now, naturally, if you only know a few words in the English language, you are more likely to use basic words like good and bad. And these words, like we mentioned before, they are very simple, they're kind of boring, and they won't really get us those high marks that we're aiming for. And according to the IELTS speaking band descriptors, this, by the way, is the same thing that examiners use when they mark your speaking. According to this, a band 5 is given to a candidate who uses only a limited range of vocabulary, and they often repeat the same basic words instead of showing flexibility. So if you do use a limited range of vocabulary, you are not really likely to get higher than a band 5 when it comes to lexical resource. And this is going to stop us from getting those band 7s or 8s that we really want to get. So what can we do? Well, one thing that you can do, like we briefly mentioned before, is to use synonyms for boring words. So, for example, instead of saying something like the food was nice, we can say the food was delicious. And just by changing that one word, our vocabulary now sounds more interesting. So let's look at another example. Instead of saying the movie was good, you can say the movie was fantastic. And instead of saying the staff were nice, you can say the staff were friendly. Now, making these changes, it's not too difficult, but it can make a big difference in your IELTS score. Now, another way we can improve our vocabulary is by watching TV shows such as Friends or any other British or American TV show. And the benefit of watching TV shows like Friends is that not only is it educational for you, but it can also be extremely enjoyable. So try to watch these TV shows. If you have a Netflix account, there's lots of TV shows you can find there. Now, if you don't like watching TV shows, then another thing that you can do is to read books or read articles. My suggestion would be to read biographies or non-fictional texts. And if you are reading articles, then a good place to start is to read the reading texts from past IELTS exam papers. And by doing this, you are exposing yourself to the exact language that you will be faced with in the IELTS test. So again, watch TV shows, read books, or read articles like the ones in your IELTS reading test. Okay, so the second most common mistake related to lexical resource is repetition. So repetition here is where we repeat the same words over and over again. So let's look at an example to see what this looks like. So if the examiner asks you, what are your hobbies? You might reply with something like this. I like playing games, I like socializing with friends, and I also like going to the gym. Now, what word can you notice there that I've repeated? The word like. So what we want to do is to replace the word like we said before, with synonyms. So you could say something like this. I like playing games, I love socializing with my friends, and I also enjoy going to the gym. Can you see the difference? So the first example clearly shows that I have very limited vocabulary, and for that I won't really get a good mark. I won't get a high band. Whereas the second example shows that my answers are more developed, and it shows that I can be flexible with the words that I use. And with that answer, we are more likely to get a higher mark. Now, the problem with this mistake is that a lot of the time, we might not even realize that we are making this mistake of repeating words. So the first thing that we need to do is to identify if we are even repeating words. And we can do this by recording ourselves when we speak. And once we record ourselves, once we are finished recording, go back, stop the recorder, and then play the recording and analyze your vocabulary. And if you notice that these same words are getting repeated over and over again, then you need to make a note of those words and then try to learn some synonyms that you can use instead. And by just making this simple change, you are more likely to be flexible in your speaking answers and therefore more likely to get higher marks that we're aiming for. Okay, so the final common mistake that people make that's related to lexical resource is when people use the wrong register. So what is register? Well, in the English language, there are two types of registers. So we have formal register and we have informal register. So informal register is the type of language you would use when you speak to a friend or you would speak to your younger sibling. And formal register would be the type of language that you would use when you are applying for a job, when you are speaking to your doctor, or when you are speaking to your teachers. So it is very important to use the correct register when you are speaking in the IELTS speaking test. To make it easier for you, register is just how formal or informal you speak. So what is the correct register that you should use? Well, let's look at this quick example and you can tell me which is the correct register. And if you find the answer, just leave it in the comment section below. So let's look at the example. Let's use this question that you can see on your screen. What do you think of the latest movie that you have seen? Answer 1 is, I think the movie was really cool and I loved the actors. The story was just awesome. And here is an example of a more formal register. I found the movie quite impressive and the performances by the actors were exceptional. The storyline was engaging and thought-provoking. Now, the correct answer is that the second register is more appropriate for the IELTS speaking test. So therefore, we should try to use a more formal register. And that's because this is an interview. It's not a conversation that you are having with a friend. So to summarize this video and to make the most of that 25% lexical resource, you should do this. Read books, watch TV shows, expand your vocabulary. And one final thing I forgot to mention, and that is to listen to audiobooks if you can. So a lot of these books that you might find in your local bookstores, there might be an audio version of that. What you want to do is read the book whilst also listening to the audiobook. And the benefit of that is that you get to listen to exactly how the words are pronounced. And if you want more information about how to master your pronunciation, then click on this video on your screen where I share the best tips how to improve your pronunciation. I'll see you on the other side. Bye-bye.